This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Okay, I'm calling to order the meeting of the Southampton Select Board for October 15th, 2024 at 6 p.m. If we could please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good timing, Stephen. Very good. Okay. Welcome, everybody. We are back. Our microphones are working tonight, so we're back functioning, and we have a full select board. All right. I don't see anybody here for Citizen Speak. Were you expecting someone, Scott, or?
Someone said they were going to attend, but I guess
if they're not here, or if they come after, we can maybe swap around. But if they show up, we can deal with it. But otherwise, let's go into our presentation, which is one that's been postponed for a bit. Robert Floyd, representing the Cemetery Commission. So, welcome.
Robert Floyd, Cemetery Commissioner, College Highway. Pleased to be here.
Hello.
Current priorities and activities. We are addressing our magnificent trees, an essential resource in our rural cemetery. The Cemetery Commission hired K&J Tree Service to remove a dangerously leaning large oak tree, looked like about 30 degrees, in the back of the center cemetery, plus 6 large branches from the tree immediately south. This alone cost us $3,000 more than our annual historic level funded budget of about $2,400. The town's Pomeroy Meadow Road stormwater runoff drainage pipe is fractured, as I reported in November last year, causing erosion to the northwesternmost bank in a deep gorge. We anticipate that the town will need access to our Section 11 once they take responsibility for repairing this. It also forces us to abandon 20 potential burial plots for the next 2 years, leading us to consider different options. To clear the area for the town, we safely removed the grave there at an expense of $2,500. A disappointing development, the wetland scientist Ward Smith's visit revealed that the area adjacent to the northwest portion of the center cemetery, the Enid Johnson property, about 80 acres or so, is wet with hydric soils, obligate wetland plants, and red maples. It was hoped to imagine a pathway from that corner to the Johnson property. Yet this is now a moot idea, a disappointing change in our plans. I walked it with the wetland scientists. I know hydric soils, and he just augured, and even where it sloped up, where you thought it would be dry, was hydric. So there's no pathway to approach that section from the cemetery. We will research the areas off of Walcott Road and the potential for entering the Fowles property to park near Enid Johnson's land for possible burial sites. So we're waiting for the season now where most vegetation is dying so we can visualize what might be. There are plans to clear the southwestern portion of the center cemetery from shrubs and undergrowth with K&J Tree Service. This will allow us to work with a landscape architect to plan the area for burials while maintaining a park-like environment. Our vision includes a walking oval pathway that is wheelchair accessible around the perimeter with a short driveway off High Street where the hearse can back up and it will be locked when it's not in use. They quoted $7,000. We agonize over this unexpected expense because it needed to be done to allow the landscape architect and ourselves to envision what is possible for a park-like section. That work may be done in the next week or 2. We have offered an Eagle Scout project to dismantle our old wooden fences and erect new black locust wood ones. that will last for quite a long time. Budget spending status concerns. We have been burdened with level funding for many years. Now we eagerly shift gears into a 5-year planning stage, which is new to us. We are no longer financially burdened with mowing costs and can direct our resources toward necessary long-term projects. Any grants applied for? We're open to applying for grants. We haven't applied for any, we're looking. Personnel staffing, we have 3 elected commissioners with extensive cemetery background and experience. And it's not a 9 to 5. The other day, somebody called me at 5. I was closing the gallery. I ran over. I wasn't able to solve the situation. I called Judith. She came over, had the big map, and we're there many times on the weekends, which we love doing because we're volunteers. Events planned for the next 6 months. We permit our Historical Society to conduct their annual cemetery walk in the Center Cemetery, which is coming up in a couple weekends. We will continue with professional tree maintenance. In fact, we're having a Bartlett tree service come in this week to treat 10 of our oaks, actually 9, since we knocked down 1. And there's a disease that affects the oaks, and you can tell in the lower bark near the ground. So they'll be taking care of that. And I think it's about $300 treatment per oak. We seek volunteers to assist in cleaning the historic gravestones to return them to the natural luster. There's something called D5 or D2, comes in gallon buckets, jars, and it's really expensive. And you put it on a stone, you don't brush it, and let it set a bit, and then you wash it off with water, and it's like new. So we've done it a little bit, but we'd like to have volunteers to help us. Long-term issues for Select Board consideration. The Cemetery Commission requests the consideration of 2 acres at the new College Highway parcel for burials and a cremation wall, which could provide a valuable new space for our services. It is flat and dry and might be the quickest solution. For some years, we researched green burials and look forward to introducing the option to the citizens of Southampton. We're going to have someone from the association come, perhaps address the public at the library. Suggested tools to help us more efficiently, cost-effectively. We will benefit from grants, certainly, for future projects. And we plan to acquire dedicated software to digitize the 300-plus years of cemetery records.
You already have that software, or you're getting?
No, we're looking at it. Chester has one we're going to look at, and we're arranging for a Zoom meeting with another software manufacturer. Everything's done by hand, meticulously, but to convert it's going to take time, but we're willing to do it.
Sure. Great. Okay, lots of information there.
Sure.
Questions? Yeah.
No.
Start, Cindy, and we'll come on down. Go ahead.
Couple of quickies.
Yeah.
In terms of green burials, I am aware that a couple of years ago, I don't want to misrepresent this, but I think Kestrel
Yes.
Land Trust, have you been working with
I've
them?
been talked to Kestrel.
Oh,
It's
good.
not something they're looking at. They're looking at a more of an open pasture field.
yeah.
So we don't qualify. But I did look into that
Oh,
a couple
okay,
of
so
years
they
ago.
talked with you about
And I
that.
spoke with them subsequently when we're asking them about the Enid Johnson property near the Fowles property.
Okay.
So, yeah, no.
So it doesn't fit with what your visions are or
No.
what they need? I see,
No.
okay.
We tried.
And then the second thing, in the beginning of your report, and I hadn't focused my head on it at that moment, but we heard about land donation for the cemetery. Is that what you were talking about, the Johnson property, when you said it was wetlands and?
Yes.
Oh, that was specifically that area?
Enid Johnson. So it's the corner that abuts our northwest corner.
Okay,
And for years and years, since 2002, before it was acquired,
yeah,
we believed we could somehow skirt whatever wetlands were there.
I see.
And have a nice pathway and have a burial here, a burial there, a country cemetery, not a clear-cut one.
Okay.
And we were shocked.
Okay.
So this is the Enid Johnson, or also known as the Huntley property, right? Enid Huntley?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And that was in 2002 that we acquired that?
2002 is when the talks were presented to the Conservation Commission and the Water Commission and the Cemetery Commission.
So what I'm understanding, just to follow on Cindy's question, the pathway from the northwest corner that you were thinking of to get to the bigger parcel of 80 acres or somewhat, that's where your blockage is.
Yeah,
But you can, the rest of the land, part of the parcel of the 80 acres is still usable, but you've got to get at it from a different way? Is
that's
that-
what we want to look at and see if that's feasible.
Okay, so you don't know of any wetlands up in that area
I don't.
at this point? Okay,
But
so there's some of
it-
that land that's
yeah.
still usable? Okay,
Yeah.
I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
That's good to know, okay.
Thanks,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, let's just go down the road. Dan?
The question was kind of a statistical question, if you maybe know it, maybe you don't. Overall, do you know how many acres we have for cemetery land, and of those, like, how much has been?
How many
used
acres on
now?
the Enid Johnson's? About 83.
In the center cemetery.
Center Cemetery, I don't know the number of acres.
Do you
Yeah.
know how much we still have available? Just trying to see where.
Not much,
Not
not much.
Okay.
We had the 20 that we expected with our new section. There may be one here and there, but we're uncertain, you know, if was something buried and there simply was no stone and maybe the records weren't kept well 150 years ago. We're looking at that southwest section for a quick fix, but we don't know what we'll find there.
Do you feel like you have enough to cover this year and the next year, or?
We're good for, it's a good question. We were, I answered the question as I would have answered before this. We were covered for about 2 years.
Yeah,
Now we've got to scratch our head.
okay.
So our back's up against the wall.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, Stephen?
Robert, on behalf of all of us, I apologize that the Cemetery Commission was not included in the solicitation of interest for 117, 125 College Highway, but my ears certainly perked up. Would the chair please forward the informational request? Simple Word document, fill in the blanks.
Okay.
You already said most of what we need, but any details are helpful. All of this will be a first draft of wishes that we
Yeah,
will
I understand.
use in dialogue with a hired
Yeah.
land planner.
Yeah.
So,
Right, no
We're
problem.
willing to get in line.
And you just said roughly 2 acres, what I heard you say.
2 acres is, we feel, is sufficient.
I'll get that to you.
We would have asked more, but 2, if we were comfortable with 2.
Okay. Go ahead, John, anything?
no, I'm good.
All right.
Truly, there are wetlands throughout the Johnson parcel, but there's a lot of upland because it stretches from the corner that you've
goes uphill.
described well, all
Go
the way
way
up to your brother's
up the mountain,
property
right.
on Little Mountain Road.
Correct.
Yeah, I've hiked it, and we've gone officially on, tour back when. A lot of mushrooms, more mushrooms than I've seen anywhere. It's
The
amazing.
whole mountain is very leaky, so that slope
That's
is
well
wet
put.
everywhere. You'll
Yeah.
be hunting.
Yeah.
Lots of spring.
But our back's up against the wall. We believe we were comfortable always believing there was a pathway. And our idea was to put 1 or 2 or 3 burial plots along the pathway, encourage people to hike, to walk, and maybe put a bench where somebody could sit, and then another pathway keep going up, maybe 2 or 3 burials here. That was an idea that we had for a long time, and Walter Kudanowski Associates, when they did the study years ago, they recommended that. It was tough to get that name out.
Okay.
What about, just in curiosity for I guess the cost of a burial plot these days? Have we,
Cost of burial plot is $600,
that
150.
changed over time, or?
350 goes to the sale of cemetery lots, 150 goes to upkeep, is a better word for that. I'm not thinking of it right now. And every penny we have in the account or two is going to be needed to work the new property wherever it's going to be.
And you've had enough funds in your budget right now to do the tree work that you're done
We
with
did.
the immediate
We
tree
did,
work?
we did. It's going to deplete our budget mostly for the year, but this was priority. We discussed it a long time and voted on it unanimously. And the idea is to get something that works quickly.
So in addition to cutting down, you've got enough money to cover the treatment of the oaks that remain?
Yes.
You've got that money?
Yes. They suggested other treatments for the other trees. We're going to have to put that off.
Okay, all right.
Just a quickie follow-up, in terms of plots, is this, because it's an old cemetery, is this a situation where maybe a family bought 6 plots or something and only 4 were used, or is there a potential for someone to
Hypothetically, you
say,
mean?
I want to be on my family plot, there's still a grave?
You mean hypothetically, would there be an extra grave or two?
Yes,
Technically possible.
yeah,
Highly improbable because we've been on it and we know, we've gone over the records one way or the other, but certainly there's 1 or 2 or 3 maybe pop up, but not a lot.
okay.
Yeah, but thank you for, that's a good idea.
Well, I just know for my own family that.
Teamwork. Yeah, no,
We
I
think they're
know.
still available,
Yeah.
not here, but at
Yeah.
another place. Yeah,
Well, and by the same token, I know from our own family plot down there that the initial layout, the first site is not usable because of the tree roots. So even though it was purchased as a cemetery
Yeah.
plot, you can't do anything with it, so.
Yeah.
So there's,
Yeah.
all sorts of considerations that,
And we love the
Okay.
trees, they're unique, they're beautiful.
No, no.
Many of them are hidden in the back. They're quite something. The tree that we took down was healthy,
yeah,
but it was at an angle. People
Yeah.
didn't like driving under it.
Sure, yeah.
And all the branches it had were over the old gravestones, and we're responsible for the gravestones. So it was a judgment call. We decided to take it down.
yeah, okay, good, okay. One last question, southwest corner, doesn't that drop off pretty
Yes, it
to
does.
Cedarhurst?
Yes, it does. But before it drops off, there's fairly flat land. It's got a little bit of a ridge, and then it drops off. So you've got the dirt road, here's High Street,
Yeah.
you've got the dirt road, and it's workable. And it could be an oval where people with wheelchairs could travel around it, no cars.
Yeah,
And we can fit it to the shape of the land with the help of a landscape architect. And we've had somebody put eyes on it and said it's possible, but they needed to get all the shrubs and saplings and dead wood off the ground in order to see the terrain.
got it, okay, good, thanks, yes, one more again.
So is there any request you need for funding to figure out that design or that layout, or is that something you already have the money and energy?
We can get by with the design, but we'd have to come for funds to implementation
Okay, so
for the
you- design
engineering.
and implementation,
Yeah.
you're working through your design now and you have funds
Yeah.
for that? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
thank you. Cheers, pleasure.
Good, thanks,
Good.
much appreciated, Robert, thank you for the information. Okay, with that, let's move into our reports. Scott, Town Administrator's report, please.
So a few things, I know we're going to talk about the land use planner a little bit later on in the meeting. We did have a meeting with Superintendent Brown and his financial team last week just to kind of start working together and finding ways to become a little bit more efficient. It was a good meeting, but there's a lot of work to be done. So,
Are they using our same software at all?
no, there's going to be some software differences between central office and the 5 other towns, and that's going to be a difficult problem to overcome, figuring out how everything communicates and avoiding double and triple entries and making sure things communicate. So
Yeah,
that's one of the obstacles that we're looking at. So, finished up the FY25 budget meetings just to get caught up on everyone's budget from last year. We have a new employee today, Tom Kennedy, who's our new assistant town accountant. So he started officially today. So that position has been filled. We also are ongoing with our hazard mitigation plan. We hope to do a public forum / presentation to the select board for the November 12th meeting. We will have the Markham FY24 engagement letter this week. Got late Thursday that they will issue it, and we'll be able to probably vote on it next
meeting.
select board meeting. We also got installation dates for the green communities grant that we received. So it's going to be, first one's going to be next week, October 22nd at the library.
Great.
And then it's going to be a little bit of a pause until late November, just because of the booking, booking concerns for the installation company. But yeah, we'll make sure that the library's done first.
This is the new light bulbs,
Yeah. This is part of that Green Communities Grant.
3 years in the making.
Oh, a little bit longer, but yes. Yeah,
More
in
than
terms of when
3
we were
years.
awarded the money, it was before I came on select board,
Like
so,
7, yeah.
yeah, good.
And then the fire ventilation system should be completed today. Everything's been installed initially with the electrician redoing the paneling. Then the actual company came out to install the ventilation systems, and then the electrician was there today to finish wiring everything off. So it did come in a little bit under budget. I have to talk to the chief to figure out how much exactly, but it should be up and running by tomorrow. So. And then the Safe Schools design was approved by the state last week.
So this is our Safe Routes to School?
Safe Routes for School, yes.
The future sidewalk improvement from Route 10 all the way up to Gun Road Extension? Yeah. So
On
it's-
Pomeroy Meadow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, on Palmer Meadow, you're right. Yep. And so we have a contract forthcoming, is that it with the state?
Yep,
Great.
so that's moving forward, and that's about it.
Okay, very good.
Are there specific issues that you hope to address with your counterpart in Westhampton?
Education, talk about the school system, see if there's any ways that we can collaborate on some other core municipal functions, things like that.
Sounds good. I think it's a great idea.
Yep.
Our recent conservation acquisition, the Garfinkel Menard land, crosses the municipal border, and there was substantial land from that landowner conserved in Westhampton through the efforts of Kestrel Land Trust and Mass Audubon, if I got that correctly.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks.
Okay,
We're bringing that up.
yep. All right, well, we'll go in the opposite direction. How about John for select board reports? Anything to report?
Had school committee meeting, nothing that nobody doesn't already know. I'm good.
Okay. All right. Stephen, what's up?
new? Tomorrow, planning board, and we're going to take the next cut at language for revised zoning bylaws dealing with site plan review. I think I failed to say those words at our prior meeting. And yeah, it's site plan review and site plan permitting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that'd be an amended bylaw potentially, is that it? Or-
Yes,
But
amended,
it's
it's not new.
not new.
There is a slate of new things, I'll leave that for Dan to
Okay.
report on, because I can't remember.
Okay, good.
Pioneer Valley Planning Council had its annual meeting on Thursday evening over at the Riverboat in South Hadley, and they've completed an economic impact study on the impact of the regional planning agency. So what do we get for our couple of $1,000 a year assessment? It's a very small amount of assessments across the 24 or so communities that are served, but they have the ability to attract state and federal grants, and then in turn those generate economic development activities and multiplier. So they came up with a great big number, and we should be very satisfied with the investment that we're making in our regional planning agency.
Is there a written report that they're going to give us, or?
They did not have that for distribution, and they did suffer a bit. It was a lovely venue, but it was entirely inadequate for the purpose. The seating and acoustics did not provide adequate isolation from the party next door.
There we go. Okay. All right, is that it? Yep.
That's it.
Okay, Dan?
The one other item to add about the planning board, which I'm not sure when this meeting happened in relation to our select board meeting, so we might have mentioned it already, was the review of the water supply protection district zoning bylaw. So I just want to mention that we reviewed that, the planning board. The other committee that met was the Conservation Commission. We had a number of RDAs, NOIs, certificates of conformance that we reviewed. The important thing to note is also the Conservation Commission looked at the land use for College Highway and had come up with at least some initial agreements amongst the committee for use of that land. And I think we'll be putting something together a little more formal. The chair will be, if she hasn't already. And then there was an Eagle Scout project that's being done for an educational kiosk on one of the projects. So I want to make sure I mention that.
On a particular trail, or?
It's the one off of,
It's Clearwater Woodland, isn't
is
it?
it Clearwater?
Yeah, on
Okay.
Glendale Road.
No, yeah, might be that one. It escaped me which one it was. I didn't write it down.
Okay.
So I'll take your word for it.
It's a kiosk or a bench or a?
It's a signage to
Signage.
talk about.
It's
Couldn't be 3.
Uh-huh,
What's that?
3 kiosks by the Eagle Scout?
One,
just one.
Oh,
at Clearwater Woodland, I believe.
Oh, because I've been following the presentations. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I missed that.
okay, good. Anything else? How about housing, anything?
I didn't have a meeting on them.
Yeah,
so I don't have
okay.
any notes.
All right. Cindy?
Okay.
Yes, on planning board?
Yep, sure.
We are somewhere in the process of looking at short-term rentals
Yes.
and Airbnb type
Okay.
operations.
Okay,
Good.
And I'm not sure where we're at. Our consultant is trying to get some reference material for us so that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel.
good. Okay. All right, Cindy?
Okay, Board of Assessors, and nothing specific to report, just kind of business as usual in terms of looking at the various forms and responsibilities of the Board of Assessors. We do have an individual who has come to a meeting. This is the 3rd time, and this individual appears to be quite interested in putting an application in to be appointed to the Board of Assessors. I've advised her to send it off to Scott, so hopefully at a not too distant future meeting, the Select Board can look at that. And she seems to be quite eager about the whole thing. The next is the Open Space Committee. We met last week. We too are contributing to the land use form. And I have to say to Dean, I supplied the draft we were using to your agent, conservation agent, George, and hoped that I realize it's all draft form and it's just kind of thinking in advance of having the land use planner come. But we hoped we could kind of overlap a little bit with the Conservation Commission. Do you know if that's the form you got, or you're not sure?
I don't know about that,
Okay.
but I can look into
Well,
it.
it doesn't really matter. It's just we thought some of the Open Space Committee goals and priorities would be pretty closely aligned to what the Conservation Commission might be wanting, so, anyway, yes.
I was sitting in on that meeting.
Oh, good.
I heard general appreciation for a joint submission
Yeah,
based on not having read what you shared. The members were not sure of what they were agreeing to.
oh, I see.
Neither was there a plan agreed to for merging or bringing their comments to your draft.
It doesn't really matter, I don't think, actually, because I think it's just all an ongoing process anyway, really. Yeah,
I encourage you to pursue it with George, the
Okay.
agent.
okay, very good. Especially when we get our land use planner, and that individual will probably
And
come
all
to
this will
various
get
meetings.
put together
No
once we get this.
resistance,
Yeah.
but no initiative.
Okay, super.
Yep.
Then also, we're continuing to look at goals and objectives of the Open Space and Recreation Plan. We have discussed we got an update from a representative from Kestrel Land Trust about the status of the acquisitions for the Mountain Waters Project. We had several members of the public attend, including the chair of the Select Board came, so that, there was some information there about what lands will close and what's happening, and what might be considerations for some of the elements of the Mountain Waters Project. but it all looked pretty positive in Bridget's opinion. And the other one is the Board of Health, and there has been no meeting since the last time I reported on the Board of Health.
Okay, very good. On my side, there's a slew of meetings scheduled. The Bylaws Committee, Advisory Committee meets tomorrow afternoon in person. There is the first kickoff meeting of the 250th anniversary celebration group, sort of a brainstorming meeting. It'll be tomorrow night at 6 o'clock upstairs in the second floor meeting room. Everyone's invited. There's several people that have reached out saying that they'd like to come. People that would like to come or can't come but have some ideas, certainly more than welcome to email them to me right now at cfowls@townofsouthampton.org. I do not intend to be the chair of this committee, but I'm just getting it organized so we can hopefully get some creative ideas going. So that is tomorrow night for the first time, and there will be various meetings thereafter, I'm sure. The cost efficiencies meeting will be Wednesday next week via Zoom. Senior Center Building Committee actually meets this Thursday. The Public Safety Building Committee meets on Monday, and the Grant Committee meets on Monday. So we're meetinged out in about a 4-day period here, but anyway, lots of things to look at. Grant Committee-wise, both the chief and I attended or sat in on some webinars about the Assistance to Firefighters grant, since we didn't receive anything on the air packs or the pumper tanker. And it was a general thing, countrywide, in terms of, here's where some general weaknesses are in how people apply, and, things that you have to watch out for. And if you don't check something, then, maybe that gave you a lower score. What I did learn that I guess I hadn't really internalized is that the first stab of anybody's application is done by an electronic read. And if you pass the electronic read, then you go to a peer review. If you pass the peer review, then you go to a technical review. So we're supposed to be getting what they call a turn down letter to tell us where we fell out. And so we'll be looking to hear what that process was so that we can apply again, because it's opening up again very soon. And Chief Fasoli and I have been talking about, I think we can basically work on it and update our information. We have to, get the latest facts and figures out of the fire department runs and that kind of stuff. But a lot of the application is going to be just cut and paste from last year, as far as we know, unless we get some other specific feedback that said you guys didn't have a very strong argument, which I don't think was true. So anyway, we will be awaiting our turn down letter very soon. The other thing that's happening very close by is the MVP, the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant process, is opening up again. There's an expression of interest that's due very soon. A couple of us I know, Cindy and Brittany Goodemuth, and a couple of others are going to be attending a webinar just to hear about that. There's some overlap with our MVP plan and our hazard mitigation plan. So I'm relying on hearing some updates on what the HMPG has been doing to see if any of those priorities have changed and whether we, might need to reorder some things. But it would be good to try and put our hat in the ring for hazard mitigation plan.
Oh, okay.
So it and the MVP plans are very, very overlapping, I think, both on disaster preparedness, climate resiliency, those kinds of things. And so we'll take a look. The MVP, we are an MVP community now. We passed our planning grant phase a couple years ago, so we should be in the action grant mode. But we will attend this webinar online and just hear what it is that we have to apply for and see if it's anything worthwhile for our attention here. But hopefully it could be. So that's things that are kind of on deck. We have one person, 2 people came as possible candidates to join on the grant committee. One has said that they can't manage it given the work schedule that they have, but another person is still hanging in there with us, so we're hoping that we will get through another meeting or two and then maybe also have a name to submit for joining the committee officially. Okay, that's about it. Let's keep on moving here. New business. We have I'm sorry. We have a warrant for the state election that we need to sign tonight. This is obviously the election on November 5th. I think everybody knows what's at stake. Presidential, congressional, senatorial, clerk of courts, register of deeds, register of probate. And so, Scott, we will, I think we need a motion, please, to allow us to sign the warrant. I'm not going to read this entire warrant.
Motion to approve the warrant as presented and authorize the constables to post.
All right.
Second.
Second, by Cindy. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion's approved. Stephen stepped out, so 4-0. Four votes yes. Stephen stepped out at the moment. All right, so we will sign that. The next thing we have is a request from the tech committee looking at maybe, I guess, I'm not sure if it's modifying their charge or proposing a new charge, if I'm correct. And Dan, maybe you can help us out, if you just move your mic up a little bit.
Yeah, it's-
On this. So this is, they proposed in our packages to put a broadband committee together of potentially 5 members in town, and at least people with technology background, at least 3 of them. And so we were going to just start talking about that tonight, and I guess trying to figure out how this syncs with the actual municipal light plant board that many towns would create when they're ready to do a broadband scenario. So
Yeah.
you want to give us a little background
Yeah,
Dan, as to
so-
how this got
Yeah, so
generated?
the background in all this is the technology committee had been working over the past couple of years to bring to vote the formation of a municipal light plant with all in the goal and the aim to bring fiber to the home, a networking solution for the residents in town. So that technology committee has taken it pretty far. They've taken it far to get it through the votes. But now the next step is trying to pair up with maybe a surrounding town like Westfield or South Hadley, who has experience in doing these types of things. And it's a big project all in itself, and something that the technology committee felt should be its own committee. So that was really why we decided to move it to ask the select board to move it to its own group to continue to move the pursuit of fiber to the homes of Southampton forward.
So to sort of branch it off from the tech committee would still exist,
Yes.
but this would be an offshoot?
Well, I think that's part of the discussion. We weren't really sure if the MLP, if that group would become its own entity in terms of municipal government, and perhaps that's the way
Yeah.
the effort could move forward, or if it becomes a committee for this topic. I think we needed some guidance.
Right, okay, so 2 things. But thus far, the tech committee, if I'm not mistaken, has already talked to Whip City and South Hadley, what's it called? South Hadley Light, Gas and Electric?
Yeah.
And so you've had interviews with both of them, you've got an idea what each could present, but you all have not made a recommendation yet to us to consider, right? Or
We had not arrived at a formal recommendation or a final solution. We wanted to leave that for this broadband committee
All
to
right.
take on.
I'll turn this over to Scott, but I'm pretty sure the next step at some point, and then I don't know how soon next is, but since we have had the 2 town meeting votes on having the possibility of an MLP board would be the formal structure that needs to be created, and I believe it's an elected position, am I wrong?
Right, it can be a couple different ways, and I think the select board needs to kind of determine which path they want to go. Some communities, it's an elected position where you have a 5-member board. Other communities, it's just like how we have like our alcohol board, where it's actually the select board that is the MLP board, so you can do it that way as well. It really depends which path you want to go. Our MLP really is only going to be talking about fiber, so it's not like you're going to have electric and gas and all these other things where you might need a larger board to really do it on a regular basis. Hopefully it's going to be something that we set it up, we negotiate with the surrounding community, and we come to an agreement on providing the fiber, and then hire a third-party administrator, and then work with that community to actually install and provide the fiber. So it won't be like a traditional MLP like Chicopee or Holyoke or Westfield
But
has.
if I disagree with that, because I remember strongly the conversations that we had, and this was the MLP board. Once that vote went through, there was, at least in my mind, there was always the intent to move the street lighting into that unit if they could secure the funds to buy out from Eversource. So I'm going to, broadband, I get it, that subject was already on the table when this was coming along. I don't have any objections to that, but I do see the MLP board being much bigger than just dealing with the fiber. We can't get our streetlights fixed in this town. We can't get the streetlights upgraded in this town. So I think ultimately it's going to go bigger. I think to initially start, and I realize I cut Scott off, so he has more to say. I'll stop. But is that I think we start by controlling it by this board, this body becomes the MLP temporarily until it's up and running, and then we determine whether or not it's big enough that it warrants its own elected officials or if they should be appointed, understanding how many vacancies we have in town right now, that if we just make another board with more volunteers.
I know, hard to find volunteers. I mean, the challenge is, I think that, if we really need the technical background, which, Dan, I think has, but I'm not sure that the rest of us have in terms of, information technology and all the hardware and all that kind of stuff that goes along with this. But back on your point on the streetlights, I do recall, if I'm not mistaken, there was something along the way that as streetlights, maybe it was just conversion to LEDs.
Right. Eversource is willing to do it if we commit to staying status quo for 10 years, and then they'll implement it over 10% a year over the 10 years.
Yeah.
And then they'll just attach the cost to the current ratepayers.
Yeah. So, I think there are some things to look at. I know in the town of, I believe the town of Chester, not Chesterfield, but Chester recently they've had a whole big discussion about selling their MLP to Eversource.
Yeah.
And apparently they turned it down, finally. They decided they were not going to sell out to Eversource. So, the whole management of an MLP is a little bit fuzzy to me, quite honestly, and I don't know what really is involved, so I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm not sure that I want to volunteer the select board to be right now.
Again, I think you have the Holyoke Gas and Electric and you have Westfield Gas and Electric.
Right, yeah.
That are both MLPs. That, I guess what I would envision is that we control the boundaries of Southampton, but we enter into agreements with one of those two entities to hold our franchise rights. They, both of them, to one degree or another, have the expertise on fiber already, and they have the electricity under control. I think the stumbling block, as always, is going to be where's the initial funding source coming from?
Yeah.
This.
Because this won't be cheap, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I would say, because Holyoke has its 3 commissioners, and Westfield, I think, has 7 commissioners out there. So I wouldn't want those, and they're both elected, I wouldn't want those elected bodies having say over the Southampton
Sure,
boundaries,
yeah.
right? So we leave that here with this select board, but they kind of treat it as a subset. And then I'm not that familiar with Westfield and to the extent that they do anything in town right now, but Holyoke Gas and Electric services the gas lines and the electric coming from County Road a distance into the community already.
Yeah, and I think we heard at the Westfield presentation, they do some of the southern part of town. They're in the south part of Southampton as well. Dan, you were going to add something, and I'll go back to Scott.
The one thing I wanted to add is, you mentioned, like I, as a member of the technology committee, have a strong technical background. And I think that's one area where, by having the technology committee trying to look into the issue with broadband, where people like me struggle, is now it's more of like a business case thing where we need to talk about how we can roll out all this fiber across the town and make it financially feasible. So I think it's a combination of not only the technical part, but also the business part of it, the skill set.
Yeah, okay. Scott, go ahead with your thought.
Yeah, I think the next step is really getting a business plan together and figuring out whether it's, financially viable for Southampton to kind of go forward and find the initial funding and contract with one of the 2 providers, or is it possible to maybe talk to some of the other ones and maybe give them like the franchise rights to, kind of slowly work into Southampton and kind of erase that border a little bit. Coming in from the Westfield, you see those signs right up to the Southampton border, so why couldn't they just keep going? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So from a non-technical standpoint, so I think there's a lot of different ways, but ultimately deciding which way you want to structure the MLP board is really the next step.
And I guess I'm wondering, through the MGL that governs MLPs, if there are not some sort of standard terms of reference of what an MLP board's responsibilities are, right? So that we would be much more clear than I am tonight, at least, in terms of what those duties would be, even if we do contract with one of these two entities.
Don't quote me, I think it's Mass General Law, Chapter 96. There's a whole chapter
Yeah,
just for municipal lighting plants.
okay, well, we'll dig it up. I'm sure we've already done some initial research on it, but maybe there's more too. So at this
Very
point,
highly regulated.
yeah, I'm quite sure it's very regulated. So tonight, I think we just want to have this initial discussion. I mean, I think, and just think about it, we may bring it back to the table and figure out, I don't know if we're ready to have recommendations from the tech committee about which provider. I mean, those two providers had come to select board years ago, frankly, and then they've been to tech committee, and they're probably both just kind of hanging out there saying, well, are you guys ever going to make a decision? So I guess I'm not totally clear on where we ought to go next. I know the tech committee is probably struggling a bit too to figure out what their
Right.
next steps are,
Yeah,
right? So-
perhaps it's something with myself and Scott getting together and looking at putting together some type of what the proposal for the structure could be for this committee or MLP or and what they would cover. Perhaps that's the next step.
That would be a good start. I think that would be.
Can I
fun.
throw out a
Cindy.
couple other thoughts to include if you two are going to be putting your brains together? And that is, what would it look like? What would it cost to individual people? What would it cost to the town? What would it get for it? What would it replace? Those are my.
That's all part of the business plan.
I understand that,
Yeah,
but that's, I'm just speaking as an ordinary,
Sure.
terribly uninformed citizen and a potential user of these. These are the, I'm just thinking, bring it down to the ordinary brains in town,
Yeah.
like me.
Yeah. No, and I think that's part of how some of the presentation had happened. I sat in on one of those presentations where it was, the town would determine whatever that fee is out to the residents that want to subscribe to it, and not everybody would need to subscribe to it. You don't have to. If you were happy with your charter, you can hang on to charter or whatever you're using right now. But should we decide to go ahead with this,
Yeah.
my understanding is that they would lay the fiber throughout town in case and whenever somebody is ready to join in. It would already be fiber ready, is my understanding on that. But we would end up setting some rates. Then, some of that obviously goes out for major borrowing, and then, whatever money we're getting back in goes to help pay off our borrowing, is how that generally works. But that's about as limited knowledge as I have
And
on
I
it.
think there's one more thing that occurs to me. Technology has just moved so rapidly in the last couple decades of my lifetime. Is this the state of the art, or is there another state of the art, like really coming down the pike that are we going to just put a lot of effort and money into something that's going to be sort of obsolete within a few years?
Yeah.
You don't have to answer that
No,
now.
I will answer. The good thing about fiber is that by having those wires, the fiber optic cable running between your home and the networking substation, is that you don't have to upgrade the wire itself to advance the technology. So they've gone from 100 megabits to 1 gigabit. Now they're on 10 gigabits, 100 gigabits. So as the demands for bandwidth increase over time with our use of the internet, we have putting that infrastructure in place of the fiber optic network is upgradable without having to replace
Okay.
the wiring. So
Thanks, Dan.
All right, so let's say that Dan and Scott will get together and see what they can come up with for some more concrete information to present back to select board at a future date. Yeah, Stephen? Yeah, go ahead.
You're done? No.
No.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I did have a question.
Yeah, sorry.
I think John is right. Where we're at is really a fiscal and business analysis that builds on the technical piece that Dan just contributed. Fiber is not obsolete. It can accommodate our needs. Beyond that, the rest of your questions, Cindy, I think really require the business analysis. And therefore, I understand that the tech committee would like a clean transfer to a board. Would the board have an interest or an authority over things other than fiber? In addition to streetlights, I'd ask the question, if the town installed solar generating facilities on town land, might that come under the purview of such a board? And should we put that on the table for planning, the technical governance? Again, I wouldn't think that the tech committee would have a lot to say about designing the governance of the body to do 1, 2, or 3 things that require major fiscal investment.
Sure.
So
Yeah, no,
I'm good with where we are, thank you.
No, good point. And I think good point on the solar there too, Stephen, because over time, we've talked about, perhaps putting in a set of solar panels somewhere in town here on town-owned property to help us reduce the cost of our municipal.
Indeed, we
bills.
have. We've actually had some recent conversations that got kind of to the nub of it. And
Okay.
I think that with our updated inventory of town lands and understanding the nature of the lands, how large or small, how wet or dry, what their aspect is with respect to solar, I think that is very much a current question.
Good. And it's probably things too where I think right now there's I would venture to say there's probably some grant money out there too for anything solar and, renewable resource kind of stuff. I think
Well, I think
there's funds out there to help us
going through our
move forward.
inventory of town lands with that goal might be a MVP
Yeah, possibly.
proposal.
Could be. Okay.
Okay.
All right, thanks, everybody. All right, let's move on. So we have next a letter, basically a letter from the Select Board to the Senior Center Building Committee.
Nicely written, I move approval.
Let's just mention it to so the residents know what we're talking about. So, Scott, you want to just put it up, or shall I just read it? One of the,
Yep. Just
if we can do that,
do have
or just,
hard copies.
I can just summarize it if you want.
Oh, this is the updated one.
Yeah. So, let me, okay.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, you go. You're on top of it. Perfect. Yeah. You all have the draft, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Where's that? Yeah, so go ahead. You want to talk it through, Scott, or I? Go ahead.
So initially, the Senior Center Building Committee had offered the town $100,000 to site the new senior center at the 117 to 125 College Highway property once we own it. Things kind of developed rather quickly. Turns out the need for hiring a land use planner is probably number one rather than having that $100,000 go against the purchase price. So they took a vote on September 12th to allow that $100,000 to be used for the town to hire a planning firm for the land. With that, they wanted to just have a letter just kind of codifying the, I guess, the intent of the town to provide them with the 4 to 5 acres. So this would be a letter from the select board just, confirming, recognizing their vote and accepting it.
Okay. Anybody have any discussion related to that?
Well, so a conversation was had outside of a public meeting. Well, no,
No,
the conversation all happened at the Senior
Center Building Committee.
Where they discussed and then ultimately voted to rescind the $100,000 to go towards the acquisition cost, repurpose it for the, what is this?
Land use planner.
Land use planning, but conditioned it on requiring us to commit to 4 to 5 acres now. Is that
Right.
the abbreviated version?
Basically, yeah. And since, remember, we were going to have the 100,000 go toward the land purchase, and then we, of course, got the nice gift, so we didn't really need it there. And in terms of the steps, the land use planner is really the critical next step to even keep us moving forward without waiting for a special town meeting or some other source of funding. So this was basically a proposal to swap out the funding that would have been allocated for a certain purpose to just a different purpose.
And I get all that. Where does the 4 to 5 acres come from? Because I'm guessing that didn't get pulled out of the air. So there's got to be something
That's part of
out
their
there that
feasibility
says-
study. That's what their feasibility study has asked for in the senior center building feasibility study that was completed a year and a half ago. So with the public safety complex, that's about 5 acres, same on this one. We've heard 2 acres tonight over here. We've got other things for housing. All of that is part of just the request, but the idea is that they would be located somewhere on that property, subject to the whole land use planning exercise.
Right, so if I go back to what you referenced, the feasibility study, I will find spelled out in there 4 to 5 acres.
I believe you will.
Okay.
You've got a square footage amount for the building?
So I'd be more comfortable with this letter if that cited that as the reference source, because
Okay.
that's all. I mean, I get the other 2 pieces, but
Yeah.
where'd 4 to 5 come from? Why not give them 8 to 10?
I see, okay.
But
Yeah,
4 to 5 as referenced.
as referenced in the, okay, we can modify that, I'm sure.
Or even more, more broadly, because these words were catching in my throat, still are. And I think what we want to do is support the criteria in the feasibility study without implying that they are going to claim a particular 4 to 5 acres. That's not the feeling I got from the meeting, so I'd like the writing to reflect that it will give full consideration to all the criteria in the
So
feasibility.
4 to 5 somewhere on the total.
Somewhere on that,
Yeah.
total, right, and I guess, how I'm, for use to hire the land planning firm, okay. I mean, I
It's
guess-
close,
Yeah.
it's close.
It is, but we're also, I mean, again, in my mind,
Yeah.
I mean, how many years did it take to get to this point? We could be another 3 to 5 years out. I hope not, but we could. It could be all different people sitting in these chairs.
Exactly, and this is why we need to
What's
codify
written.
something,
Yeah.
which is from their point of
So
view.
4 to 5 as reference to be located somewhere.
Sure,
Because, again,
yeah,
this is putting the cart way before the horse. But at some, I mean, originally, we were 2 separate locations
right.
in town. Now we're coming together. I mean, this is a question that can't be answered right now. Will it make sense at some point in time to have the 2 facilities located in such a way that it's a common parking lot?
Perhaps, and that's
Well, so then
what this
maybe
whole
there
land
isn't
use
a-
planning exercise
Right,
would
yeah.
help us determine, I would hope, yeah.
Right, so if that comes up and it comes out to, you can get the building of your desires, but you really only need 3.8. I don't want to pigeonhole us,
Okay.
that's all.
All right. I think we can certainly go back and reference the source of this acreage. Is that the main thing we want to change, or
That's
did you
mine.
have
I
some
think
suggested,
Stephen's suggesting somewhere on the
you have a
parcel.
suggested addition to the last sentence or so there? To construct,
Like John, I wanted to lift up the feasibility plan and link it to this.
okay,
And the feasibility plan addresses much more than the lot size.
Yeah.
So, no, there's nothing specific that I want to call out. Just that the final location is subject to a process.
Sure.
It's not guaranteed
okay.
tonight.
So subject to the land use planning process that
Yeah.
is about to be
And I think
undertaken.
everybody gets that.
I think so, yeah. I mean, but if we can, okay, so with those couple of changes,
I trust your
do we
editing,
need to come
Scott.
back with that, or are you okay for Scott to
Yes.
tinker that
I'm
and do
okay.
that? All right, so then could I have a motion to,
Motion to approve the letter and to authorize the chair to sign it on our behalf as modified here,
okay,
and just provide us with a copy of the signed copy.
okay.
Second.
Second, Stephen? Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes, thank you. All right, next, Scott, you've already talked about the audit engagement letter. We'll expect that for the next meeting, right, for FY '24?
Yep, yes.
We'll pick that up next time. All right, the next thing that's come up, Select Board, you've all received this.
The designation of land use planner.
Oh, yes, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
The old.
Oh, missed that one.
the old one.
Hello. I skipped over that one. I knocked it. Yes, definitely. Didn't mean to skip that one. My eyes went elsewhere. We have lots of paper in our folders here. So, yes, we've got apparently 3 entities that submitted their proposals. So, Scott, you want to take it away? Yeah.
So this is the exciting part.
Yeah.
So thanks to Stephen, we were able to meet and discuss, what our needs were with 3 different organizations, Berkshire Design, BDS, and the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. Each submitted their own proposals, both Berkshire Design and BDS on their own, and Pioneer Valley Planning Commission had teamed up with another local firm, Dodson and Flinker, for their proposal. Last week, myself, Stephen, and Randall Kemp, Highway Superintendent, met to just review everything. And we had a pretty lengthy and involved discussion on which firm to recommend to the select board to move forward with. We each kind of looked at it from a different angle. I can certainly speak, from the way I looked at the proposals. One of the things that I voted, they were all very competent, all could do the work, that we're very sure of that. My own personal opinion, looking at them, I lean more towards the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, Dodson Flinker, and the the BDS quote, mostly because both of them are local. BDS.
Sorry, BSC.
BSC, I'm sorry. BSC.
BSC Group.
BSC Group.
Are you calling BSC Group local?
Well, they have a local.
Okay.
They're national, but they have.
Nationwide, they are the
Right.
biggest of the three.
They have a very local connection. They recently hired Easthampton's former planning director, and local resident as well, lives within the area still. And Steve and I, we were able to meet with him. He was very impressive. He obviously knew everything. He's very familiar with Southampton, working in Easthampton. A lot of the similar obstacles that they've had, a lot of the things that they've been doing would apply here. So that gave me a lot of comfort. The Dodson Flinker and Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, again, we would, we've worked with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission in the past. One of the things that if the select board did agree with moving forward with that proposal, we just want to make sure that the employees from the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission are the ones that we would like to continue working with. We've recently worked with Ken Kamiya on the 40R project, which is ongoing. So we would obviously want him to continue taking a role in that as well.
He'd been instrumental in our update of our master plan as well, a few years ago.
So from a layperson, a non-planner, looking at the portfolios of each one, I thought the Dodson Flinker had the nicer pictures and, more community engagement. Looking at just from someone who doesn't have that planning background, what the final result was going to be, that's where I was kind of looking from, having an end product of what we could actually present to the town and show where the possibilities could be. Where is the senior center going to be? Where's the public safety? And what do we do with all the other land in between there? And a lot of times visual it has to be visual for people to understand that. So I thought the Dodson Flinker was a little bit better at presenting that than the other two. And they've also done local projects, the Atkins Corner, they've done the Turner's Falls downtown development. They've done quite a few municipalities across the state, and they did the Turner's Falls, the Atkins Corner, things like the North Grafton Transit Village, the Lennox Gateway Project. So things like that, this is kind of what I would envision, something that we would need to move forward into the next step.
Okay.
They are the most expensive. They did come in at $80,000.
Okay.
But if you look at the amount of hours that they've committed to doing the project, I think it comes out to about 12 or 13 weeks of full-time, 40 hours per week. So it's a significant amount of time that they would have to dedicate to that, which I think is reflected in the price.
So that was one of the things I was going to ask, is the estimated time frame. I guess I didn't catch that directly without converting the hours. Are we talking a 3 or 4 month time frame to do this whole study, you think, or?
Yeah, I would have to move pretty rapidly. I think both BSC and Pioneer Valley, they both know that we have a deadline to start moving forward with the one-stop grant and getting things ready for the next phase in our 2 public safety buildings.
Right, the one stop usually opens up in February, so, yep.
For
Stephen?
the expression of interest,
Right,
correct.
yeah.
That is one of the explicit criteria, goals that we've discussed with all of the applicants. I'm delighted. The 3 applicants that I suggested all were interested and submitted their information. It's a tough assignment because we're asking for public engagement and visualization, and that's a really different set of skills than going out and doing survey engineering. But we hope to get to a plan of land from which we could give or grant to or designate for the public safety and for the senior center or with help, put out an RFP for development of mixed-use development, if that is part of the vision. Okay, so Dodson Flinker with PVPC doesn't do survey, but they're all registered landscape architects, and I think we could even get to the goal that I'm talking about.
What do you mean by they don't do the survey? Can you explain that to me? Would we have to
Survey
cite
still
anything
means
else?
going in the field
I see.
and looking at boundaries and taking
Yeah.
measurements there. You can also create a plan, if you have the right credentials, from existing plans and verifying that that all meets at the end.
Yeah. there's
And
certainly
so a landscape architect can do that even though they're not a public land surveyor. I don't want to get down in the weeds.
Yeah. And there would have
The
been
only-
a survey from them, for them to work from already anyway, right? I mean, there would have been
I
land
think what we
surveys.
have technically is a compiled plan.
Yeah,
If you want to get technical about it. But BSG group might be the ideal group when we're looking for 25% design. Because at that point, we will definitely be out of the bandwidth of PVPC or even Dodson Flinker. So we covered the landscape, and I think that we've seeded what may in the end be a good relationship with Boston Survey Group, BSG. And nothing to take a shine off Berkshire Design Group. They just, I think, underestimated our need, despite the fact that I've worked with their principals in Easthampton. We'll get her done.
yeah. So I
So
think,
I fully support Scott's recommendation that we go with PVPC with Dodson Flinker.
and so that would be, as you said, though, provided that the PVPC assures us that the three individuals, or at least the prime individual that's listed in this proposal, is part of the deal. Ken Camilla has to be part of the deal to manage this. Now, do you envision?
And Peter, we need to really identify who's going to be the face of facilitation.
Yeah, whomever is going to be doing that. So that was going to be my question. So do we envision that most of the community engagement will be on the PVPC side rather than, or how do you see this breaking out in terms of workload?
They have identified who does what between PVPC and Dodson Flinker, but that's where I think we need to engage. And one of the issues that Randall and Scott and I wrestled with is who, on behalf of the town, provides some daily support. Randall's been here long enough to plait his rope and hang himself. Scott's getting close. We certainly can't make Scott the day-to-day project manager. And so I'm recognizing that keeping them productive and on the best track requires engagement from our side, and that remains a challenge.
Okay.
Although,
The one thing that I think
We're up
that
to-
I noticed that the basic, where did I see it? The basic cost proposal, sorry, from Dodson Flinker, somewhere I saw it. I lost it. Anyway, the add-ons included extra engagement and so forth, community engagement, which, here we go. So it was basically $74,000, and then facilitate a public forum to review design alternatives, and then a second optional public forum to present the final results. Personally, I think for a project this huge and this important, I'm in favor of as much public engagement as we can possibly fit in the window. So to me, I would like to, if we're going to go with these folks, I would encourage us to go with the
thank you.
entire package and have the ad alternates just be there. I think
And that's
we can't go wrong to be as
Whose
open
numbers
as
are these?
possible. Huh?
Whose numbers are these?
That's Dodson and,
That's a proposal.
that's
The
the proposal.
PVC, Dotson, and Flink.
Dodson and Flink.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wholeheartedly agree with that, and that brings it full circle to who's the person that's doing that facilitation.
Yeah.
Because it's not a surveyor,
No. Yeah,
and
well,
beyond that, we just want to be comfortable.
yeah, okay. Well, that's good. So, okay, well, you guys have done your due diligence and made your recommendations to us. Any questions, Cindy?
Well, I'm on the Public Safety Building Committee, and so is Chris. And what I want to know is, and maybe I'm missing this, are they going to coordinate with the the feasibility study architects that have been working with us for greater than a year. Now, granted, the last I heard, the architects doing that feasibility study, HKT, knew that we didn't have to be limited to the same 4 acres that we thought we were limited to. So they knew that would be different, but is that in this proposal, to work with, and also to work with, I don't know if the Senior Center Building Committee, they also had a feasibility study done by a group, a competent group. You know, I just want to make sure there's coordination there and not overlap. I do appreciate what you said, Stephen, about or somebody said, about who's going to be the day-to-day face, somebody that isn't going to interfere with the action of what has to happen here in the town hall and taking away from our professionals here or Randall down the street. That we're in, and what I also want to know is there going to be periodic sort of meetings.
Yes.
Yeah, I sort of see that, meeting 1.
Yeah, we've got it up on the screen, so there's.
Yeah,
a variety
I'm
of
looking at
things
the
here.
same thing, right?
So I think at least, I mean, I don't know, right now, there's no current engagement with the senior center feasibility study architect firm. I mean, they did their thing in there.
Both of those contracts are
They're in
essentially
there?
done.
Pretty much, but there's at least the report that they can,
Okay,
refer to.
In task 1,
Right.
meet with this key stakeholders.
Right,
Gotcha.
so there's at least the feasibility studies that they can refer to. If we needed to somehow, bring in those firms for, a couple-hour meeting, I imagine that could be arranged. I mean, not promising anything, but I don't see why that couldn't be arranged if they needed a face-to-face for something. So that is pretty much, I think part of the outline of what they've done here. The 1.9 is very clear in terms of the various stakeholders, all the work that Stephen's been doing to get out this initial expression of interest, I guess I would say, the interest form to the various committees. That is a big piece right there, too. So I think that's good.
But the deep dive that Cindy's asking for to ground this with feasibility studies is in there at 1.7. And the whole task 1 of getting oriented before they go out in public, they're only meeting with town officials board. Before we go out to the public, they'll have the opportunity, a lot of effort in getting them up to speed with everything we've done. So I thought that they actually detailed out that portion better than anybody else.
Okay, good.
All right.
And they also wrote some of these plans. If you want to look at the housing production plan or the open space plan, they know those because they wrote them.
So I must be missing a connection here. Why is it that PVPC doesn't have pricing?
They will be the lead contractor, and these guys would be their subcontractor.
They do have the column right here, PVPC, staff average rate.
That's their staff, yeah.
So the recommendation is to go with PVPC, who's going to turn around and rely on this other firm for, I'm assuming, their specialties.
Right. Correct. And by going with PVPC, because they are our planning commission in the area, we also don't have to go out to bid for this. So that moves things farther along.
Well, I mean, I've said this previously in public forums, and I'll say it again. PVPC has let us down a lot.
In certain
So,
areas.
well, I'm
HR,
just-
yes, definitely, I agree.
So I really don't have any desire to get involved with them on anything. So I'll just say that. I mean, if you think this is the first time they're actually telling us who they're going to partner with, and if we really want to go with Dotson and Fisher, and we would go independently with them anyways, and PVPC is just going along for the ride to get some extra money, I guess, but why do we need PVPC other than to avoid a public bid process?
Let me answer that. Dodson Flinker was on my list with caveat that they could certainly do the visualization and the public engagement, but that they couldn't take us as far with zoning and the technical pieces of planning. PVPC is not just convenient for reasons discussed, but they are a direct conduit to state and quasi-state assistance.
So is the Collins Center. and look where that got us. I mean,
I know.
I'm just telling you, it's,
We've been there, we've seen that.
But I think that's why we were trying to make the point that Ken Camilla, who's listed in here on the proposal, we want to be sure that he's with us. He did the update with us on the master plan. He's been involved, I think, in the
40R.
well, the 40-hour stuff, but he wasn't on the, he didn't do the open space plan. Was he involved in the housing product? No.
That is the 40R, isn't it? Isn't that the 40R, the housing production
No.
plan? No, it's
No.
different.
They connect, but.
Yeah, but not
different.
that. But anyway, he
Master
definitely,
plan?
we know, I don't know, he did the master plan update with us, absolutely, and did a great job. And then he'd been a consultant for a
Oh,
while
and he
with the
helped us
planning
with the
board.
open space and recreation plan.
He did assist
He
with
did,
that.
he helped us with that.
So
And
we,
housing production plan, I think so.
maybe, a little bit, I
You
think,
know,
I think the.
In answer
I
to
mean,
John's
where I have
thing,
issues.
John, I think we have to realize there has been some turnover in the staff at PVPC over the years.
Yes,
And,
most of the staff beyond Ken
Yeah.
that are identified at PVPC
yeah,
are
But-
relative,
go ahead,
just trying to answer your question,
go ahead.
are relatively new graduates of the Conway School who've had a couple of years either in municipal or regional planning.
Okay, but the second thing is, whenever you hire somebody, whether it's to fix my stove or to do something big in town, you know, there's an accountability on our part that we're gonna hold, and I hate to say it, but you gotta hold them to what their contractual obligations are, and on the time frame that they say they're gonna do, and, that's all I can say in answer to what you're bringing up, John, about don't deal
Yeah.
with them at all, which is what I'm hearing.
well, they certainly wouldn't be my first choice.
Yeah. No, I understand. We've had, certainly a mixed review in terms of our work on HR. We've had a couple of things go through them that, didn't turn out the way we had expected in terms of their level of deliverability, shall we say.
I think that just like we ended up with a vague commitment from the Concom to work with the Open Space Committee on this question, we need to avoid being vague ourselves. And we need to develop clarity. We can't get there tonight. If not Randall, if not Scott, how do we have a point of contact that is
Yeah,
charged with keeping them accountable?
yeah.
So the key person is the Kenneth Kuma?
Camilla, Ken Camilla.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the one folks keep.
And so this, what they're putting in there, the 187 hours, is about 30% of the total job to be done. And they're the lesser cost of the bunch.
Right.
Ken Camilla, right.
So I'd make a motion to approve the recommendation, provided that we have written assurance that Kenneth Comia will be acting in a lead capacity for the entire project, or the scope of this.
I second that.
There you go.
You too, Ian.
Okay, Cindy and Dan, both second, okay. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. All right, good. All right, well, this
Thank
feels,
you all.
this feels good to
That's a big
move it
step.
forward. It is, it's a huge step, and thank you for all your work and identifying people and being part of the whole spiel to get it together here. So we will, do a little bit more thinking maybe for our next meeting about how we can be, who can be that helping, coordinating, scheduling, put people in contact with people.
On a side note, when I first reviewed the packet, when it came out and I saw Stephen's name and correspondence, I'm like, he's gone off the reservation. He's reaching out without the chair's permission.
Yeah, we know. No.
that too.
No. All good. All right, let's see. Next up, I just lost my paper, sorry.
Audit engagement letter?
No, I just mentioned that, the audit engagement, where Stephen mentioned, Scott mentioned that,
Oh, he did, okay.
we're squared away for that for next meeting, for sure, they're gonna get it to us. So the next issue is the proposed gravel pit located within the neighboring community of Montgomery, and this, just to let the public know, we've received a letter dated October 7th about an intended gravel pit on Southampton Road in Montgomery. This is a letter signed by, I think, 32 residents of Southampton. If those of you who may not know, the Southampton Road at the end of Russellville Road going up the mountain, half of it, shall we say, is Southampton, half of it is Montgomery. There is a proposed gravel pit that has been talked about in Montgomery. It's gone to their zoning board. They were looking for a variance to apparently put in this commercial entity in what is now something zoned residential. That zoning hearing apparently was continued. There has been no date from what we know as to when it will be brought back again. All I have done at this point in time is to respond to the letter initiators, who are Cheryl Arnold and Lisa Fedora, I believe, and just to say that we were going to bring it up tonight. We had no further knowledge and discussion. It was the first that we've heard about it, and Scott has already reached out to the town of Montgomery officials to get a meeting set up to understand from their point of view what this is all about and how this would impact us. Obviously, from the town highway point of view, we maintain a good share of that road. It's a very windy, curvy road, and so, I think we want to at least hear more about what the plan is and just understand it better. So it'll come back to us at this point in time, but I just wanted to let it be known that we had received that. Okay? Any comments, questions?
I support all of that. I'm astonished that the town has no written record of this meeting. But good luck.
Well, and it's a little bit unusual, too, that when you have a continuance, usually you set a date for continuance, in my experience.
Many
but
things that are all
apparently that
about
has
this.
not been done, so they did not know. The town clerk, I believe, answered you and said there's been no date set for the continued meeting. So I'm not sure where it's just sort of floating with the zoning board of appeals or where that's at, but we will keep pushing for a meeting with the chair of their select board and to find out what's going on. Okay?
Good.
Okay.
All right, moving on. Budget process, Scott. Any thoughts on next steps on there, please?
Just working on the budget calendar. I sent it to the finance committee, and I'll send it around to the select board as well. Just probably tomorrow I'll also send it to the department heads, just trying to kind of detail a little bit more with some specific deadlines. I'd like to be able to at least get the draft letter to all the department heads and the boards and committees November 14th, scheduling maybe a night meeting for all the boards and committees that, they may not have huge budgets, but, like the Parks Committee and Cemetery Committee, kind of introducing them and going over how planning, how the budget process is going to work, and kind of introduce them to it. And hopefully on the November 12th meeting with the select board, we can kind of talk a little bit more about guidelines and what our goals and objectives are for the year. So just detailing it out through September, October, November, December, and then January and February gets a little bit more to be determined. I do have to reach out to the capital committee to talk about timing as well. But assuming the finance committee is on board, it would be on the off weeks of the select board meetings, we would start the budget presentations. And then that would lead us into March in case there's any second budget presentations that we would need to have back. So, a lot of the bigger departments, there's a lot of questions with, highway and police and fire. So we might reserve some time for that.
So in January, you're counting those as being joint meetings with finance and select board?
Yes.
Okay.
So the only, it's an issue every year. I don't know that they're going to change it, but statutorily, regional school budgets have to have the first draft by Valentine's Day. Norris's budget cannot happen until the second vote of the regional budget. So there's no way, Norris budget is never going to be done in February. We try like heck to make the April 1st deadline of the bylaw, and we usually come in on March 31st. So I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, right. Good to know.
Well, that could be memorialized and scheduled because
Yeah.
it's out of our control.
Right.
Well, yeah, at least for this year. I mean, I do think ultimately at some point in time,
It'd be nice to.
things should be able to work faster, but,
Yeah,
Get a little more accountability for our money.
right.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it is a big piece of the town budget,
Sure.
the Norris section. so-
Absolutely, yeah. But it would probably be good to have at least a footnote or something there in terms of when we expect the school
Yeah.
information, yeah.
And since we're blessed with having the town moderator here, I noticed that there is an annual town meeting warrant deadline date in there that you presumably have consulted on or hopefully will agree with. This is return on the request. Where you go?
So the,
Open in January.
That's the call for
February.
articles, right?
That's the call for
Return.
articles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
return in March.
Yep.
It's still in draft form, so we're gonna
For the
send it out to all
various
the
articles that
stakeholders.
we'll
No, I
do.
thought,
Yeah.
And
I
then
thought you
eventually-
closed it later.
Yeah,
Further down.
that's in April,
In April,
which has to be X number of days prior to the,
ATM warrant finalized.
Oh, it's still TBD. I'm sorry. I thought you had a date there as well.
Yeah.
I think this is great, and it's a work in progress,
Yeah.
obviously, but
Well, and I think it's something too that, we can get it up on our website and, under the town administrator page or wherever you think it's appropriate, Scott,
Yeah.
just so that, people can understand that we have a schedule, we're gonna try and follow this and do our best here, so, you actually do
why
have.
are you bugging me in October about something that doesn't happen until July? Well, because, yes.
Yeah, well, part of it's this process, yeah. So you have a draft schools budget in March, so that's what's gotta change then, right?
Yep.
For what John just said.
Critical.
So, yeah,
Critical.
okay,
Yes.
all right. Any thoughts and comments on that? That's a good.
Thank you.
Good start, and I like the idea of having meeting with, the department heads, and then a separate meeting then with, chairs of committees and so forth, that are the ones that usually put in some money requests anyway. They may not be big money, but at least they do, some of the boards and commissions and committees that do request funds in our budget, that they understand this process too. I don't think that's really been a good outreach effort in the past, shall we say, to let everybody know what we're doing, so.
And we're asking new things.
We are, so, okay. Before we go into old business, is there any other business that can't wait until the October 29th Select Board meeting that anybody knows of? Nope, okay, then we'll keep on moving. How about old business, hazard mitigation plan update, Scott? Recent meeting, when the next one might be?
So the next meeting is probably gonna be the November 12th Select Board meeting with the public engagement and the presentation.
Okay. So the public would be able to follow that online or else come to it as well and be able to ask questions and,
Yeah, thankfully I was able to work with Randall to get at least, not the password for the Facebook, but at least have access to it. I think the password may be lost forever, because it's registered under an old email from 10 years ago, and in order to get the stuff, you need to have access to that email, and there's no
Dear.
way that you can get it. And try finding a number to call Facebook.
yeah, right.
Gonna happen. So, but I'm gonna hopefully, when we publicize it, at least maybe do like a Facebook Live so people can type in any questions that they
That'd be
may
great.
have.
Yeah, I think that would be really good. I think that's, that engagement with the public to chip in on that would be interesting to do.
I think we can begin our preparations so that we're ready to turn on the camera.
Yep, sounds good. All
Somebody
right,
find a
so
tripod.
that's moving along anyway, so that's good. And as I say, we'll hear on the 12th if there are some changes that are coming up, but that's good to know in terms of the priorities that had been established 6 or 7 years ago now. Stormwater Enterprise Fund, this is something that we'd put some ARPA money aside to have done. How are we moving on that one?
No movement yet. Just we signed the contract and Ty and Bond is,
Time Bond is going to do it.
Right.
Okay, all right. So there's at least the intent to move on that. Anything on the Manhan Meadows Bridge update? This was the,
we should be getting the engineering study any day now. It's been about 30 days since we contracted with them, so
Okay.
they should be sending that over.
all right. Good. Capital asset planning, I know we've taken up a bit of it under the cost efficiencies committee. We'll keep on chugging there. Right now, we don't really have a capital committee in place, so cost efficiencies has kind of tried to help take over that a little bit with Scott to try and look at our long-term capital planning. And we'll keep on looking at that. We'll have a meeting next week, and I know the department heads had given you at least their 5-year or 10-year capital asset replacement plans, right? So, okay.
And the land piece, I've been in touch with David as well as
Good.
Bradley, and have all of their information, including David had a thumb drive, so I've got the ability to incorporate all the
Okay,
tax
good.
maps as well as our online GIS. And we'll have one spreadsheet that will be simple to use, that'll allow people to just click on a deed reference and pull up the deed. We'll have them here in-house.
Okay.
Click on the CAMA ID and pull up the parcel in context using our own GIS.
Okay.
And it's about 75% built.
Okay.
What comes out the back end is in answering questions like my classic one. Doesn't the town own some land down on Riverside Road? And the town owns 6 or 7 parcels down there, each with its own story. So to answer that question consistently, we need to pull together all 6 stories in context.
Yeah.
And that's very current because of discussions about
Sure.
access to the greenway and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, no, that's good, yeah. No, I think that's fine. I mean, where we were stuck, and I was wanting a first step to happen before you spun your wheels on doing this in great detail, was for Bradley and Dave to sort of be sure that their asset list matched, but I think you've gone ahead with it, and I think it's fine, it'll be.
There are only
there.
80 parcels.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And for back and forth error checking, I think it will be iterative.
Okay, good.
And they'll come 3 or 4 at a time.
Okay,
And so it would be great is
Okay.
to sustain this dialogue amongst the principals and
Okay.
educate our
Sure.
conservation agent as well, because he's been assigned something like this, but hasn't approached it this way. So
Okay.
I intend to work with everybody to refine the tool and do the boring stuff myself and let them debate whether they've got the right code on the
okay,
right
yeah,
parcel.
or the right naming of the parcel, or any of that stuff. I know there were some
Yeah, and
things that were.
that's where, for me,
Yeah.
having an electronic copy of the deed that you can just click and
Yeah.
read the preamble and read the closing, that this is meant to be for conservation and natural resource protection, or it was funded by the state through the DEP watershed protection.
Yeah.
The town has been remarkably active in tapping these public funding
Right.
sources,
Yep.
and now we have to remain accountable.
Yep, no, totally agree.
So, thank you for the opportunity.
Yep, okay. Surplus equipment disposal?
Good news and bad news.
Oh, dear.
Bad news is we had no bids on the first 2 lots that we put out for the old computers and like 15-inch
No surprise there.
LCD. The good news is we had multiple bids on our Tahoe, so it's over $1,000 right now.
Oh, all right.
Over 1,000.
Wait till we get to the Crown Vics.
We already took the catalytic converter off of it, right? I mean, that's what they're buying.
Better check. That's interesting. Well, that's great. So Judy's got started on this. So we've got, she's got the system understood now to figure out what she's got to post. But we've got, the inventory done for all this excess equipment that's down in the basement. And it's a matter of getting it posted along with libraries and COAs and others that have given us a list that we'd already approved at select board meeting as excess equipment. So good. Cindy?
Question to Scott. Thank you for doing this, because I know has been a lot of stuff down there.
Oh, Judy did all.
Judy.
Well,
I didn't
Judy's
do any.
posting it.
thank you, Judy. Can you tell me what's going to happen to those old computers that nobody wants? What landfill they're going to go to? Is there a way to do this in a very green way to destroy them?
Yeah, they'd have to be recycled properly.
And how does that, does it cost the town money to recycle them
will.
properly?
It does. It's negative value for us. I was just looking online today, seeing how much, about $5-10 per monitor.
Okay.
Some places will take computers for free, but most of them will charge.
I see. And how many are we talking about approximately?
Oh, I can, there's lots.
Yeah, a
There's
couple
lots.
dozen,
Like-
yeah.
Yeah,
Like-
Megan and
like
I,
30 or
Dan
40?
did the inventory down in the basement. There's,
Okay.
yes, 30, 40, there's old printers, there's a microfiche machine, there's all sorts of stuff down there.
So I ask in part because I think members of the public are listening, and that
Yep.
might be a question I would have. And the other question I have, and in regards to all this, and I do appreciate, is I know there's a storage area in the basement, and as a chairperson of the Board of Assessors, I've gone down there with our administrative assistant and her predecessor, who has retired, and I know there's just tons of stuff down there, and I know I store things, and I look back and I go, what did I keep this stuff for? And is there going to be some kind of a concerted effort to determine, are we keeping stuff we don't need to keep?
I would like to get a dumpster.
Well, I also think there's
Like a town hall
also,
clean day.
and I think our town clerk knows that there's needs to determine you know, the requirements for maintaining certain if they're documents,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
so
no,
Yeah,
that's-
we have
Record
couches
retention.
down there, we have
Yeah.
old chairs that are
Okay.
no good anymore.
Yeah. So the
there's-
basic equipment has been inventoried, but files and so forth have not.
Okay.
But by the same token, there are a ton of files still left in the old town hall
Yeah,
that are tax records from the 70s and 80s,
Yeah.
town clerk, assessor related, but mostly, I think, town clerk and treasurer related. So should we get a dumpster, we would want to include that as well. We talked about trying to clean that out a year or so ago and
Good.
never got it going, but
that's good.
that needs to be done too.
That's,
But the basic equipment stuff that's, unless somebody's been throwing something down there recently, Megan and I finished that probably in,
It's been growing.
8 or 9 months ago.
Growing.
It
But it
has
needs to
been.
be really clear that it's separated somewhere from what
Oh.
we've already tagged, because.
Can we just change the lock on the door?
Yeah.
Like, and make it so they have to get the key from you, from
Yeah,
your
so-
office?
The elevator goes down,
Yeah. Well,
so it'd be tough.
well, are you saying that somebody's brought their personal stuff in or something?
No, no,
in
no.
there?
No, they're
but,
purging their
junk keeps-
offices and,
Yeah, junk keeps-
Accumulating.
if,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
Things
Okay.
have a way to accumulate, unfortunately, but anyway, most of the stuff is in what's now Art's office. So that's where it is.
Poor
So
Art.
that's why we want to get rid of it
Okay.
as soon
Yes,
as
I
we
do.
can.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, FY '23 status of the audit status, Scott.
Hopefully, we're almost done. I've answered all the questions. I know Jen has answered the questions. There's a few outstanding questions that they've contacted Bradley about, mainly balancing the actual revenue versus the budgeted amount. So Bradley's working on that. I wasn't here, so I kind of have to rely on Bradley for that. It goes back 2 years, so. But hopefully, we're going to be almost done, and we'll have the engagement letter for '24 soon.
Very good. Okay. Green energy approval, so you mentioned that they're going to start on the library next week?
The 22nd to the 24th.
Great, okay. And then the others somewhere toward the end of November, the
Yep.
rest of that. That's great. Very glad to hear that. Anything new about our East Street being on the TIP project or anything there? Probably not.
Nothing yet.
I think we're just keeping it there just for a reminder if things are happening for us.
I move approval of minutes of September 3, 2024.
Second.
I read through them, and I have no edits.
Very good. Okay, yeah, no, they're very, very thorough, I think so. Anybody else? We had a motion and a second. Any comments? No? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, very good. We do have 2 select board meetings, well, one more select board meeting coming up, October 29th, and then November 12th and the 26th. So those are our regular select board meetings.
I respectfully request to be excused from the October 29th when I won't be here.
You won't be here, okay. All right, no problem. Thank you for letting us know that. And then we will be going into executive session shortly. Let me read the reasons for that. So executive session per MGL, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, highway superintendent and town accountant. MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. This is the Cannabis Host Community Agreement. And MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Number 7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements. This will be to review the executive session minutes from March 26th and May 14th, 2024. May I have a motion to adjourn this and move into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Stephen, second by Cindy.
No, by Dan.
I'm sorry. What?
Seconded by Dan.
Okay, seconded by Dan. Roll call vote, please.
Umbra, yes?
Johnson, yes?
Lavalley, yes?
Palmer, yes.
Fowles, yes. Okay, we are adjourned at about 7:38.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.